Nier Replicant is a game that largely lives in the shadow of its successor. While Automata has become this cult classic, Replicant remains this hidden gem that even many of those that loved Automata are yet to touch. And honestly, I would not be surprised if even many of those that loved Automata will not get through Replicant's story once, let alone the 5 times it requires to get the whole picture. That is because in the pursuit to use gameplay to convey story elements / themes, the game can quite literally become a chore to play, as that is what you do, chores. See, this guy right here wants you to bring him fish, and that guy over there needs you to locate a piece of rubbish. And while you technically don't have to do these things, yes you do, well, there's a good amount of side quests, as Replicant, much like Automata, requires multiple playthroughs to actually see it through. And to unlock those playthroughs, you're required to unlock every weapon in the game, and what that means for you is that you will have to go ask Joe where Jeff is, who tells you to go back to where Joe is, to ask Jill where Jeff told you Joe may be. And while you are doing these things to unlock the weapons, or buy, I don't know, fertilizer for your Stardew Valley simulator, the protagonist Nier does all this for one reason and one reason only: his sister Iona. He goes through the mundanity of life, running errands, doing favors, all in hopes of, at first, finding a cure for her sister, who has become bedridden through this awful illness, and later finding her. And I wouldn't have a big issue if I could just write off the side quests as boring chores that canonically Nier can do. Good for him. You kill those sheep or whatever you need to do. But the problem with that approach is that, yeah, the main quests take forever to become interesting as well. Because when I said that you have to go ask Joe where Jeff is, who tells you to go back to where you started to ask Jill where Jeff told you Joe may be, you have to do the same thing for the main story as well, for hours. Hell, I would argue some of the main missions are even more tedious than the side quest ones, at least the first. And yet, the game gives you just enough to keep you going. The game begins shortly before a 1,000-year time jump, as you start as Nier and Iona, who are in the middle of a snowy summer, fighting for their lives, trying to catch a break. Iona, already sick with some sort of illness, surrounded by shades. Desperate not to die and let his sister down, Nier finally overcomes himself and does the impossible: pick up a book. And he levels way the fuck up through this. The intro works as a sort of microcosm of the whole experience in a way. A really brilliant way to introduce you to the game, as you get to play with every single magic ability the game has to offer, meet the characters at their core identities, sickly and brotherly, but also opening up so many questions. Because the next thing you know, we are 1,300 years in the future, and we got Nier and Iona looking the exact same way, sickly and brotherly, just cottagecore versions of that. And oh boy, get excited for hours of slow burn, as the first half of the game, for the most part, keeps it rather light, as to sort of throw you off to how dark things do get later on. And you know, symbolize the mundanity of life and all that. Follow a girl who walks far too slow, go farm items for some guy, kill a number of enemies to clear an area. But even through all that repetitive gameplay, it is worth it because you do earn bits and pieces of story, and I think I enjoyed the story even more than Automata's, which is insane to admit. Automata is far and away the better game in terms of pacing, quality of life features such as being able to teleport, which this game just makes a joke about that did have me chuckle, but I would have rather teleported than chuckled. And also, you do get the ability to fast travel like later on, but to such limited places, it's really not much of a teleport. Replicant's story, however, has beats that I found superb. While I enjoyed the characters on Automata for what they were, mostly one-note androids that obviously had much more going on underneath, almost every single character in Replicant had elements to them that made them a delight to listen to all throughout the experience, especially as your party grows, and with that, the back and forth banter does too. The party really starts with handsome Squidward over here, Grimoire Weiss, a book, a man, an obnoxious Englishman who I so very much love. While the first impressions might foolishly make you cringe, he quickly becomes such a lovable goof of a character. His character would not nearly be this delightful though, without the character that made me take following notes. Pretend I have a note here. I thought, oh wow, I won't have to speak about sexy gaming girls for once, until they hit me with the, why is that girl in the underwear? That is when I knew I will indeed have to speak about hot gaming girls. So yeah, Kaine, see the cheeks out. And even through this oh so difficult fate of having her cheeks thrown at you at quite the regular intervals, she too is such an amazing character who swears just about as much as 15-year-old me. And they even give you a lore reason as to why she is dressed like that. Well, she's an intersexual and has been an outcast for most of her life because of this personal fact. And while the game keeps this fact quite subtle, such as her getting mad at a man asking him how periods work, as she, you know, might not be an expert in this in herself, it is very interesting to see a character so front and center actually be intersexual. So I suppose to cope with this fact about herself, she's been trying to overplay her femininity to prove to herself and everyone around her that she indeed is a bad bitch. Another reason why she looks like that is because it gives the writer a way to have a fun back and forth between Vice and Kaini about her undies. Or it's just because Yoko Taro, set writer, self-admittedly just loves hot women. But Kaini really is more than a girl in her stinking undies. While you don't learn about her backstory until the second playthrough, she immediately jumps out as someone who clearly has always felt like she doesn't fit in and thus build up walls in order to not get hurt. And this archetype sounds somewhat similar to 2B's rough outer appearance but a sweeter core. The execution is quite different here. Kaini also Naruto runs? Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Next up, Emil, our gay king. Yes, the game even has a gay character. How woke of them. The East truly has fallen, hasn't it? Anyway, Emil also has a tragic backstory that almost made me feel bad about shooting him every chance I got in Automata. See, him and his sister were experimented on to become the ultimate weapon. Well, her sister was the ultimate weapon. He was the failsafe to take care of the ultimate weapon if anything went wrong. Well, it went wrong and he had to take care of the ultimate weapon, his sister. The second time around, he even killed her, sort of, with us, by merging into her body. Yeah, kind of freaky. But Emil is quite sweet, and although he does have an anime boy voice, he also adds a bunch to the group's fun dynamic. The constant back and forth between the cast gives the fetch quests a very necessary distraction, as hearing them bicker about some silly hangout was always able to bring a smile to my face. Another thing I actually prefer in Replicant over Automata is the combat. While I don't think the enemies themselves are all that interesting, hell, I kept thinking about those infamous conduit golems fighting the shades. The combat somehow felt even smoother than in Automata, which from what I heard is actually a unique remake feature, as the original release had less smooth combat, to say the least. Because yes, this is a remake slash remaster, or patch if the title of the game is anything to go by. And while the combat of the game has greatly improved through this update, other elements were left as they were in the original, such as loading screens. Yeah, I get used to those. Nier Replicant really makes you feel like you are back in 2010 playing on the PS3 with how many times you load into an area. At least the loading screens have cute animations, such as your poor sick little sister running and falling flat on her face. It would have been nice if these were reworked for the updated version, as Automata was also a PS4 title and hardly had any loading screens whatsoever. But then we would have missed out on these cute little letters Yona sends too, I suppose. Yeah, I think I would have been fine with that. What also helps during the long journeys to go ask Joe where Jeff is, who tells you to go back to where you started to ask Jill where Jeff told you Joe may be, is the absolutely banging soundtrack. It is so damn good. In my Stellar Blade video, I was talking about sauce and how it was lacking it. This game, however, got it all over itself, like a baby eating spaghetti bolognese. Fucking face first into that bowl. Every track got such a strong identity and is a real toe tapper, as Nier would say. You even get like a DJ tag sound every time you kill an enemy to add to the track. The art design in this game is also absolutely breathtaking. Every environment just has so much character, and because the camera is a bit further away, you get to really take in how gorgeous these places truly are. I love tilting the camera down a bit and enjoying watching the birds fly across the gorgeous landscapes. They are, again, similar to Automata, not too many different environments, but rather a few areas that get expanded on every once in a while. Replicant is set in a more fantastical world as opposed to Automata, which mostly feels strictly sci-fi. Just being able to use magic was honestly very fun, even if functionally it is no different to being able to project spells into existence. But with fantasy, you also get things such as fighting jagged wolves or poisonous spiders, which lead you right into a Resident Evil level where you unironically enter a mansion with set camera angles and fight off Set's poisonous spiders. Replicant loves switching genres, and it really helps the pacing when it does, because allowing you to switch from the third-person combat to set camera angle spooks or a Diablo-esque top-down view to hell even text adventures, which funnily enough was the first time I really locked into. I unironically went from slouched over to gamer posing once the first text adventure started hours into the game, which I don't know what that says about me or the game, besides me apparently being a massive tweet. But it was such a nice change of pace at that point, like hours into the game where hardly anything major had happened. I would argue that segment is the beginning of the game picking up its pace, even if some would argue that the text adventure segment in itself is a drag. The use of text adventures in this game and Automata as well could be knocked for robbing you of some possibly interesting cutscenes, but mixing the mediums within the game as storytelling within combat and exploration can only be done within the medium of video games. Watching cutscenes akin to movies or TV shows and reading text like a book not only allows you to balance the pacing of the game, but also use the strength of each of these mediums within the art of video games. As reading books allows you to imagine these scenes in much grander ways than an in-engine cutscene might be able to. As a lot of these scenes that happen within the text adventures are also a mix of fantastical environments and solid character moments that might not hit quite the same without high-budget motion capture acting. I definitely preferred this switch up to text adventure to the big surprise prior to this one. You enter this ancient temple with loads of challenge rooms, which in theory sounds dope, and honestly on return is, as you get a couple of smaller combat challenges. But the first time around, a lot of challenges are based around movement, with one challenge being do not run. I see here, devs, you said it so this boy starts running on the slightest shift of the stick. The only thing you are challenging here is my patience, so I just started blasting. If you can't avoid the obstacle, destroy it. Obviously, movement challenges could have been fun, but they just weren't here. Yokotaro and his team are obviously very interested in the nature of gaming as a whole, with how he blends and shifts genres throughout, and the nature of killing everything, no questions asked, that is so common within video games. With the most memorable example to me being when you run into a group of praying Vex in Destiny, just slaughtering them while they mind their own business. Only in that game you are applauded for doing this. And Nier, well, the game first leaves you to it. Go nuts on these fucks. Hell, they look evil, don't they? Until it slowly peels back the layers and gives you hints as to why you may be wrong in your mindless killing. First hints can be found within 2 side quests. One of them having you kill the shade in the library that does not fight back. You just have to pound on it for minutes, really hamming into you. And this is fucked up, because by minute 3 of slashing into the sky, you should hopefully realize, damn, this may be wrong. Another side quest has you looking for a shade within the town, and after running from A to B, back to A, to C, to D, to A, to B, you find the little guy minding his own business. Literally big vibing. And yet here you are having to kill him, because that's what you do. Meaningless violence is what you've been doing, and you are told he may be dangerous, so best be cautious and get rid of him, even if he does not seem to actually harm anyone. At some point in the story, your town gets attacked by the shades, with Kaine sacrificing herself by letting Emil turn her into a statue to block off a shade that is too powerful for young Nier to fight, and your sister gets abducted by the Raid Shadow Legends Lord, who looks an awful lot like you. Yeah, I mean, I think most people probably understood by now that the shades aren't just monsters. Spoilers, they are actually just human souls that were supposed to wait on standby until the plague has lifted and then take over the body of androids built as husks to be occupied. Yeah, okay, I didn't know all that by this point, but I had played Automata, so I was sure the shades had to be human. The characters don't realize this just yet though. So with your sister abducted, kinda locked in to rocks, and the town in ruins, the game cuts to black 5 years later. And look at that, it's Nier having aged far more in 5 years than he ever did in 1,300 years. What's the deal with aging? I love the design of time skip Nier. The voice was also phenomenal. So is the rest of the cast, with the outliers being the villains, because Jesus fucking Christ, man, what the fuck is up with Grimoire and Tyrant? Oh, killed myself there.
Do you not remember Grimoire Vice?
They sound so Saturday morning cartoon coded, they're just so out of place. Within those 5 years, Nier became a lot more hardened, and obviously has been looking for a way to find his sister and bring back Kaine. So you do the latter first, and this is the spot where all but one of your new game pluses begin too. You wake her up, defeat the big bad locked in the basement, and now you need to find these pieces to the puzzle to get into Raid Shadow Legends Lord's Castle. And the rest of the game is just beautifully paced the first time. I'll get to the new game plus system in a minute. There really is some heavy stuff happening in the second part, like a genocide. Technically too, if you count the murder of every wolf in an area as one. Kaine gets faked out killed, which does happen too many times, I feel. Like, I think she fake dies about 4 or 5 times. That's like 4 or 5 times too many times. One time we almost killed her too, and I was shocked. That was too easy. If I'm gonna play as her, am I gonna be this weak? I thought, foolishly, and thinking I'll switch to her perspective on the second playthrough. But her gameplay mostly consists of reading, so she was strong enough for that. And she's also fun to play as, which eventually does happen. Eventually. We'll get to that. And after the erasure of this town, it is only Emil who recognizes how messed up this all is. The other two, clearly too used to death and violence at this point, just want to move on to the next mission, in which you discover a girl who was left in the wreckage of a ship, a slaver ship. Alone and lost in there, she is discovered by the mailman, who tries to take care of her, make her feel cared for, and help her gain the confidence to join society, leave this dark abandoned in place. But she's also a shade. She cannot go out into the sun. She does not know human customs. She does not know how to speak, laugh, sing, write. So she tries to learn. But in her naivety, she also eats people. She thinks this will help drown out the shade within her, turn her into a real human. Tragically, she is the only human here. Amongst a bunch of androids, she becomes the outcast if it's not human enough. So we do what we do. We attack her. Guns blazing, baby. Kill her. But we are too weak. She's an absolute beast, looking like that monster lady from the SpongeBob movie. Hell, not even the sun can stop her. Only the man who took care of her gave her a reason to change. He manages to stop her for a moment. The man who cared for her so long is now beating her, begging her to stop and just die already. All this context you don't get until the second playthrough. And here we are, killing her with zero regrets. Level up, baby. So let us talk about the end of the game. First, you discover the Devil and Popola, the two people who took care of you for years, basically acting as your moms, are here to stop you from entering the Raid Shadow Legends Lord's Castle that looks like a mall. Very America core. They reveal to you that all these shades we've been killing have been human this whole time. And we are not human. We are husks that developed our own desires, goals, and personalities. We are only here to serve humans. Only there to occupy this body until the humans are ready to take over our frames. And we are about to ruin this whole plan that Devil and Popola have been tasked to lead. They were designed to prepare everything, make sure it all works, that we have to fight them, because otherwise, what will happen to our sister? These people that stand in our way mean so much to Nier, but not enough to stop him, not enough to turn around. And honestly, these twists work so damn well. Like when people said Stellar Blade was basically Nier's plot, I understood it. Yeah, it's quite similar to Automata, but like, it's literally Replicant's plot. Like, 1-to-1. And yet it was just so bad in Stellar Blade. I'm sorry. All the characters have so many emotions. They seem quite real. Not entirely sure why Nier's gestalt grew up with us. That's what. So after beating Devil to a pulp, Popola becomes enraged. Understandably so. She gets a beating, but it's not quite enough. So Emil has to go Super Saiyan and sacrifice himself. He seems to die. We go on to mess up our own gestalt, so we fight him in order to rescue our sister. But he already did semi-successfully put his own sister's soul into the body of android Yona. Yet with the developments of androids, these are no longer husks. There are now two Yonas within this body, the human gestalt and the android that occupied this body first. The original occupant begging to be freed to see her brother. So human Yona steps to the sun and sacrifices herself, leaving Gestalt Nier to go crazy. He has lost his literal only reason to live. For over 1,000 years, this was all he wanted, to cure his sister, to save her. And now she's gone. He did it all for nothing. So we kill him. We kill the boy we first played as, the Nier from the intro. So who do we actually root for here? I mean, I did for our current Nier, the one I've been playing for hours now, who I've seen bond with all these people. But the Gestalt Nier has every right to do what he did. It was really just fulfilling what the people promised him. They were promised husks to put their souls into when the time was right. And the time is right now. The husks are here, but they aren't just husks anymore. So who's more human now? The floating soul that can hardly be in the sunlight? Or the androids who look human, who act human, but really are not? I don't know. Playing Replicant also really adds to Automata, knowing that the humans the androids have been waging war for thousands of years have been murdered by the androids themselves, just like the aliens were murdered by the machines, long before the androids even knew they were androids. Grimoire Weiss sort of dips within this fight because he loses power. Kaine says she has to leave. You are reunited with your sister, and credits roll. This is ending A, so I start playthrough B, thinking, oh well, it'll probably be like Automata, right? Where I go to play as Kaine now. And then playthrough C will maybe be Emil. Oh hell, what if I play as the Gestalt Nier? Wouldn't that be crazy? Nah. You begin at the point where you bring back Kaine, but now you get to read through her backstory, which is genuinely very funny, cute, and also tragic. You read through the story of her upbringing, being an outcast, not allowed into the town, bullied for being different, attacked for not quite fitting into the town folks' understanding of normality. And the only person left to stand up for her is her grandmother, a lady who takes care of Kaine for years. The only person that values her, tells her she is pretty and beautiful the way she is. They form a tight bond, but the grandmother becomes older and weaker, depending more on Kaine to do the daily work, leading to her gaining more confidence and standing up for herself more, until they get attacked by a shade, the gigantic monster that kills her grandmother. And Kaine, finally mostly accepting herself the way she is, changes once more. The shade, a monster, clings onto her. This thing saves her life, bargains that as long as she fulfills its lust for murder, it will let Kaine remain in this body. Now the town folks have another reason to shut her out, call her a freak. But then you go back to being Nier. You have to find all the pieces so you can go do it all over again. there's really not that much that changed. You do, however, gain the perspective of the shades. Through added cutscenes and voice lines, you now see the bosses you killed before you casually mowed them down. Again, I feel inclined to compare this to The Last of Us Part 2, where people got really mad that the game dared to let you play with the dog you previously killed in the first half of the game before switching perspectives. Well, Nier Replicant isn't so kind as to only show you one thing you killed. Almost everything you killed was completely innocent. Children, animals, and hell, even babies. Yeah, they had you kill babies. You see the sad story about a kid who just lost his mother to androids, being adopted by this cute robot, and how they have dreams of exploring space. They finally found someone to take care of them, and you know what you did to them. You'll do it again. You will go in there, kill the robot, kill the kid that does not fight back. In fact, none of the little children fight. If you do not attack the children, they will just look at you. They will not throw a punch. And I did not notice until my 4th playthrough that this is the case. It wasn't until then when I stopped killing every shade I saw. I just ran past most enemies now, and they just let me leave. Hell, they were more peaceful than the wild animals who would just randomly kick me while I'm minding my own business. This playthrough is also where you discover the backstory about the girl on the boat, and you see that the wolves are completely innocent too, just mad and saddened by human-made climate change that turned their forest into a desert, being hunted down by humans for absolutely no reason. Honestly, this was harder to witness than knowing those balls you killed were babies, because they really linger on those wolves' struggles. And even the little detail where the only source of life, the only bit of nature to return to this desert is inside their hideout. A place without human interference. The only place here it managed to gain life, to grow greener. So we move in there and slaughter them all. It's tough. I mean, we have our motives. How they killed our friend. She was innocent. She did not do anything wrong, besides walk really slow and waste my time that one time. There are more examples of enemies you killed actually being peaceful little creatures, and the point of it all being that, well, language barriers are a bitch, I guess. So knowing that Nier is unknowingly more of a monster than most of the enemies we kill, hell, even the girl on the boat only had a body count of 2, we move back to the end. There are also little scenes cut between events here and there that show Devila and Popola explain their plan and how they try to put everything into place for things to work out. So once more, Emil sacrifices himself, but this time you see that he actually survived it somehow. You fight off Gestalt Nier again, and this time it cuts to him being in the White Room, surrounded by the people you killed in your journey, approached by Gestalt Yona embracing him. I don't know if these are his dying hallucinations or the afterlife, but alas, he gets to reunite with his sister, at least momentarily. It's not too much of a change overall. The ending still did not feel very final to me, so I needed C to be a bigger deal. Playthrough C begins back at Kaine being the hardened, and Jesus Christ, it's getting tough. You play through the same game again, this time with literally no differences added, only more things to skip now, as you now have the additional scenes for playthrough B that you've already seen too. And also, I guess right at the end, Emil's sacrifice, you finally get to read through his backstory, but I already told you about that one, merging with Sister Roll. You kill Gestalt Nier again, but this time you watch Kaine become consumed by the shade within her, and it doesn't take long to knock her on her ass, but then the game presents you with a choice. Do you want to play through this fuck-ass section you already played 3 times through again or not? In other words, do you kill Kaine and free her of the pain she is enduring as she is slowly being devoured by the shade? Or do you sacrifice yourself, like your actual game files and everything, completely erase everything to save her? And this was the real deal on the original release. After erasing your file, it's Jover, similar to how it is in Automata, but in the updated version there is an E route. So first we gotta get the C ending, in which you kill Kaine and let her rest in peace as you take your sister back home. And now you can start again at the fuck-ass boss fight for the 4th time now, do the diabolical ass run back again all the way to the end, rescue Kaine, and now delete your files. Watching as every single thing you did or didn't vanish was such a strong moment that really stuck with me. Nier disappears and only remains a faint memory to those that knew him, something bugging them, like a memory that you know exists but have no access to, so you can start a new game. Technically, you have no inclination that anything will carry over. The idea is you just make a new game, play it because you want to experience it all again. But after playing for like 3.5 hours, you switch to Kaine's perspective. Not in the moment you were in the game at that point, but rather pick up after the events of ending D. Now, if you didn't know there was an ending E, and this is how you unlock it, brilliant. No notes. You play the game expecting the same old, and eventually get thrown for a loop. You get to continue the story where you left off. But this is the age of the internet. I knew I would get another ending, which is why I started a new game after ending D in the first place. And having to play 3.5 hours only to get like less than an hour of gameplay is tough. I think the same effect could be achieved if after the intro section you cut to the Kaine content. You would still be shocked because you were just playing the game for 15 minutes and all of a sudden, boom, you're continuing the story from your deleted game file. I really hate how they handled the New Game Plus system in general in the Replicant. I'll be somewhat fine if playthrough B was the way it is, but by C it definitely should either pick up much later, like shortly before before entering the castle, or you play through the whole section as Kaine or something to change things up a bit. Because playing as Kaine is super fun. She has a different moveset and also special abilities different to what Nier can do. So only being able to have 3 short combat scenarios or so before having a single boss fight as Kaine feels slightly underwhelming. Not to take away how cool the part is that you do get to play as her, and the interesting implications for the grander story that come with it, such as these 2 androids who potentially may be the first to be in 9S prototypes, as they are voiced by their respective voice actors. Or the beautiful execution of gaining your memories back by fighting through traumatic experiences, reuniting with Emil, Weiss, and Nier. Man, it's just so soured by how much you are literally going through the motions to get there. Through some slight tweaking of how you unlock the new content on the New Game Plus runs, the game will be able to deliver meaningful content without realistically dropping players through sheer boredom. And yet, when I rolled credits for the 5th time, regaining my save file from before I made the sacrifice, I wished I could return to the world and have something to do. I could do the remaining side quests, but I think I'm good. Nier Replicant may fight its players' patience at times, but also rewards you for doing it all on such a high level that makes it more than worth it. While I understand that people know and love this game too, I do feel it does not quite get the praise it deserves. Even the remake / remaster did not quite give it the treatment it deserves, as it really deserved some retooling to help players get to experience everything Nier Replicant has to offer. Nier Automata was nearly a masterpiece to me. Nier Replicant, as it is today, is nowhere near a masterpiece, with how many flaws the game does have, and yet strangely, I would consider the experience as a whole one of my favorite ones ever.